You might be in your journey of learning CSS and you might wonder, oh my God, where does this end? In this video, I will break down everything there is to know about CSS. You will be able to know what are the basic stuff and what are the advanced stuff. So if you want to master CSS, this video is for you because you will know the path that lies ahead of you. And if you just want to know the basics, then also it's for you because then you will need to know what crap you don't need to learn anyways. Hey, I'm Jen from Coding Jungle, where we talk everything related to the front-end world. So if you like this kind of content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, leave your comments with the things that you're struggling while learning CSS or any other thing related to front-end. I'm here to help you out. Anyways, without further ado, drumroll, let's begin. All right, I created this mind map to kind of give a bird's eye view of everything there is to know about CSS. Actually, now looking at it, it looks like some kind of crazy, weird-ass alien. But anyways, don't freak out. I know it looks like a lot of information, but I tried to divide things into very small chunks so you actually know what information is relevant to learn. On the left-hand side, you will find everything that is basics. And on the right-hand side, you will find everything that is more advanced. So let's start with the very basic things about CSS. As anything or any language, when you start learning a language, you need to learn about the syntax. The syntax is pretty much how do you write this language so the computer understands it. In the case of CSS, we have something called selectors and declaration. Now, I will use the page from W3 Schools, which pretty much has a lot of information about CSS, which you can also check that out. And here you will see that a selector is pretty much an element, an HTML element that you need to have in your syntax. And a declaration is made out of properties and values. In this case, what we're saying is that this heading 1, so this title, needs to have the font color blue and the font size is 12 pixels. Now, part of the syntax I also added is specificity. If you're new to CSS, specificity is pretty much the rules that the browser uses to determine what set of rules or declarations to apply to what elements. We can do a whole video just about specificity. Please leave in the comments if you're interested in that. I'm more than happy to explain to you in more details. Once you have the syntax down, then you need to understand the most basic concept, which is the box model. Everything on a website is a box, which is crazy, right? Because when you look at it, you don't see any boxes. But to give you, again, from W3 School, a very nice representation of this is that every single element on a site is a box. A box is constituted of a content, of padding, of borders, and a margin. Now, following the box model, once you have those two things down, then it's pretty much just about the building blocks. Now, CSS, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is what makes websites look beautiful. So for that, obviously, you can handle things like colors, backgrounds, text, and a lot of other stuff. So let's start with colors. Colors, you can actually put colors in an RGB format, which looks something like this, or in a hex format, which looks like this. You can also add HSL and actually names. And there are funny names like tomato and deep pink and actually corn syrup blue or something like this. There are really funny names out there. But anyways, what I marked with the check mark are the ones that are kind of like industry standards. When you see an application, the CSS is usually written down either in RGB values or hex values. Following that is backgrounds. To show you an image, here we have the Uber page, and all of this is a background. When you see these hero images, they're called, they're all made usually with backgrounds. Same with Airbnb. Everything that you see here is a background, this image. What else we got here? Okay, yeah, we talk about text. Text, you can manipulate it in every single way. You can change the size, the style, the line height. You can actually have icons, which are sometimes text. You can modify the links, and you need to know about web safe combinations. A super advanced topic here, which I put here with a little rocket ship, is how to avoid flickering. Also, anything related to lists, tables, and forms. All of these things you can control with CSS. What else we got here? Yeah, the layout. Also, I have this really cool example here. It's called Maptia, which is, I think it's like a travel magazine, online magazine. And they do really cool things with the layout. Look, like they put like an image, and then here to the right, they have the text. What else they got here? They have also a bigger image here, a smaller image here. So it kind of gives a very premium feel. Also layouts you see very common in blogs. Let's open an article. Let's see if they do that here. This is also a layout with a beautiful penguin. But sometimes in blogs, you might see that there's the content here, and here is the sidebar with other additional information. All of this is achieved using the layout. You need to know about CSS units. Pretty much units is what measurement is used to be able to, again, measure elements in a page. There are pixels, ems, rems, VH, and VW. Funny enough, actually, you can also put centimeters as units, but that's really not industry standards. When you see a website, you will see any of these being used interchangeably. Also, media. You need to handle media. Media is one of the most important assets or things on a website because it conveys emotion to the customer, to the user. And you need to know how to compress images. Maybe a designer comes along, or maybe you are a designer and you have experienced this yourself, and you have a super cool image, and the time you upload it to the site, if you didn't pay attention, you might have hurt the performance of your website. So, because what if you put, like, you upload a 1 GB image, so you need to learn how to compress them. You also need to know the difference between SVGs, PNGs, and JPEGs, when to use each one. There are different cases where each one of them is actually a better option over the other. Also, you need to learn about WebP, JPEG 2000, and JPEG XR. I put this as an advanced topic. You also need to learn how to handle the picture tag, also advanced, and here I put the little check mark for industry standards as well. And you need to know about sprites. Now, I put a little dinosaur here, meaning that it's a bit outdated in my opinion. But again, if you find an older project, people might actually still use sprites to put icons on a page. So just know what a sprite is, how it looks like, and if you ever have a project that you need to work with it, there's more than enough information out there that will help you how to use sprites. And as I mentioned before, you need to handle videos, right? Like also what format is better, what length, how to loop if you want to create a GIF. You just don't upload a GIF, you usually loop over and over a video, which is better performant than just uploading a GIF. And guys, responsive, this is super important. It's 2020 and everything has to be kind of mobile first, without the kinda. Everything has to be mobile first. A lot more people have smartphones and everyone surfs on the internet. So imagine if you hit a page and it looks like 1990 where everything is broken. So your pages need to be responsive. But for that, we use CSS. And for that, you need concepts like what is a viewport? What are the media queries? How to make images and videos responsive. I don't know, there's a few websites also that I have encountered where someone puts an iframe of a YouTube video, for example, but then when you look at that in mobile, it is not responsive at all. So you need to learn how to handle this stuff as well. And the basic how-tos. You need to know how to add CSS to your project, either through an external file, internal CSS, or inline CSS. I wish, I actually forgot, but I would have put a bit wrong here, because industry standard is to put always an external file. You also need to know how to add comments. I tend to not add much comments in my CSS files because I kind of think it's self-explanatory. But if you're doing something complicated or using classes that are kind of weird because you have to, then you need to know how to add comments so either you or the next developer will know what is going on. And you need to know about float and clear. Now, what is this exclamation mark? Again, for me, float and clear is a little bit of older days of development. But again, a lot of people still use it and still useful in some situations, but I would say it's not that common anymore. So you just need to know what float and clear is, and in case you see it, you have an idea of what it is. So that was the basic stuff. Now that we covered the basics, now let's jump to what I like to call like the fun stuff, the advanced stuff. Obviously, with all these basic stuff, you can create websites. You would have a website that is responsive, that has good compression of images, that the layout is beautiful, that you use backgrounds and colors and everything is nice. But to be honest, in front-end development, we sometimes use frameworks. So what are frameworks actually? Frameworks are, the most popular ones are Bootstrap, Foundation, Bulma, Materialize, and Tailwind. Let me show you Bootstrap real quick so you have an idea of what it is. All right, so here is Bootstrap, for example, and Bootstrap is pretty much just already created elements or components that you can kind of plug and play on your site. So here, for example, you see alerts. They already have different kinds of alerts designed, and you just need to use the different classes to make that work. So it looks pretty cool, right? Like you have a lot of things already built out of the box. Here you also have like navigation bars that are pre-made. So here, for example, you have navigation bars that are kind of like prefabricated. That's a better word. frameworks are like prefabricated components, CSS components that you can put in your application. So here, for example, you have a drop down, you have a link, you have a home, something that is disabled, you have a search bar. So like this, every other framework is similar to this. They all have their pros and cons. Usually, I mean, this is again kind of like a personal preference, but generally speaking, frameworks is just a helper to make you prototype things faster. Most often than not, then you end up creating your own framework for your own project, or the company has its own kind of framework because their needs are very different and specific, and none of these actually cover that. So again, frameworks, they're prefabricated components that you can use to prototype things fast, and you don't need to worry about any of the colors or design. Ooh, and super cool thing, all of these provide components that are responsive. So that makes it super easy. Let's say we want this nav bar here, and if we look at the responsiveness of it, let's look, nav bar, where are you? Here, you see, it's responsive, and here we can see that it became a hamburger menu, and that you just don't need to do anything, just pretty much plug and play like I mentioned. So what else do we have here? Ooh, browser stuff. By the way, us developers, we're like horrible at naming stuff. I'm also guilty of this, and I didn't find a better name for this, but anyways, browser stuff. What do I mean by this? You need to know that not every browser is created equally. So meaning that Chrome, Firefox, Safari, I'm not going to mention the other one, aka Internet Explorer. They all have different kind of like engines, so therefore they are not all created equal. So something that might work in Chrome might not be supported yet in Safari, or just doesn't work in Safari. So because of this, you need to know what prefixes are, so everything is compatible across all of the browsers. What normalize is. In general, normalize is something that normalizes or standardizes all the components on a website. It's a very common example that the very bare component that you see in Chrome looks totally different in Safari and completely different in Firefox. And well, like I said, Internet Explorer, forget about it. Like, I hope you don't have to support it. If you do, I'm so sorry. And you need to learn about Can I Use. Can I Use is a super cool website that you can pretty much ask it, can I use stuff? So here we can add, can I use Flex? Flexbox helps you to create more fluent layouts. So here, for example, we see that CSS Flexible Box Layout module is supported across most of the browsers. Green means supported, and here in Firefox version 2027 is partial support. And of course, everything that's Opera Old, Internet Explorer, and Opera Mobile, they're not supported. Now, naming systems and architecture, oh my God, this is kind of like a tough one because again, I think this is it's a topic related to the preference of the team and the people that you're working with. I would say you don't need to know all of these by heart. There are different ones here. Just know that they exist. Maybe know the basics of what each one is. And again, for example, I've worked in companies where there is no naming system used. I've also worked in other companies where it's BEM related, others that try to achieve object-oriented CSS, others that want SMACs. So it really depends on where you're working at. And just know they exist, and if you need to implement it, these are really easy to pick up anyways. You need to learn about effects. Also kind of like a advanced topic is everything related to animations, transitions, and kind of like activity going on the site. You need to know how to handle this, especially animations, because if you go super crazy about an animation, what was meant to maybe provide a better user experience might end up actually hurting the user in the sense that the page might be slow, it might flicker, might be buggy. You need to be able to create animations that are smooth for the user. Now, preprocessors. Preprocessors are the two most popular ones are Sass and Less. And these pretty much, I would like to call them that it's like kind of like CSS on steroids. So preprocessors pretty much help you to write. It's like a layer that comes on top of CSS that helps you do crazy things. Like, I don't know, you can do loops, you can have mix-ins, you can create variables. Now, fair enough, you can also create variables in CSS. But back in the day, before the variables were in CSS3, Sass and Less totally allowed you to do that. So that allowed you to just have one variable for a color and then you just change it there and then it would change everywhere else. My personal preference actually is Sass, but but also less is cool. I mean, both of them are all right. You also need to know about best practices. Actually, industry standard, I must say, or a lot of places that I've worked, they all refer to the Airbnb style guide. Now, if you Google Airbnb style guide, yep, it's a very small document that pretty much give a set of rules of how they write their CSS. So one of the best practices, part of that Airbnb style guide, but also in general, is avoid using important. Again, specificity, right? You need to be able to handle specificity correctly to hopefully never have to use important. You also need to avoid to nest more than 3 levels deep. I've had projects where there's been like 20 levels of nesting, really 20 levels of nesting, and it's really horrible to try to change anything there. You have to avoid overusing classes. That is also very important. You need to know about critical CSS, what it is, how it affects the page, and what are the benefits of it. And most likely you would want to use a linter, which pretty much is a helper to let you know when you're making mistakes and can correct the mistakes that you're making. So for example, in your linter, you might have a rule that says that you cannot nest things more than 3 levels. So if you want to do a 4th level nesting, the linter will kind of yell, or your editor will yell and tell you and mark something with red that this is not okay, you're not allowed to do this, and therefore you're able to abide by your style guides and keep the best practices. So that's pretty much it. This was actually quite a very long video, but I hope it gave you a very big overview of everything that there is to know about CSS. Wow, that was a lot, wasn't it? Anyways, I really hope this video was useful and that you actually really have a holistic view of everything there is to know about CSS. If there's something that I tried to explain and I didn't and it really wasn't clear, then please leave them in the comments below, your questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them in a future video. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I hope I see you around next time. Peace!